Hi, everybody. I'm Diane Brady. I'm here with Alan Dershowitz, who is, of course, a noted lawyer, also professor emeritus from Harvard Law School and author, most recently, of Get Trump. Alan, good to see you. There it is. And we are actually talking about Fox News and Dominion voting systems and the case that is going to be potentially unfolding this week. Let's start with a settlement. There's a discussion right now of a possible settlement. Is this a case that you would settle if you were advising either side?
You can't know whether to settle a case unless you know everything about the case, unless you know what the likely outcome is. But this is a case of principle. And I would hope it would be a case that could work its way to the United States Supreme Court. If it's settled, obviously it won't, because there's a lot of discussion about the malice requirement, about whether or not TV stations can put on points of view that they don't necessarily agree with. I myself am involved in a litigation with CNN about issues. So I would love to see this case litigated, but obviously lawyers make decisions all the time to settle cases, and the postponement in the case may suggest possibly that there is discussion going on looking toward a settlement. I don't know how a settlement could be worked out in a case like this, but settlements are always preferred to litigation, because litigation is a roulette wheel.
Now, isn't every defamation case essentially a case of principle? I mean, when you make that distinction, what specifically about this case sets it apart?
Well, what sets this case apart is here you have a network that put people on who stated things that the network itself and the anchors in the network didn't agree with. And so the real question is whether or not there is freedom by networks or by any media to put on their platform views they disagree with. We know that Congress passed a statute expressly allowing that when it comes to certain social media. And so the point of principle is whether what's good for social media is also good for CNN and CNBC and MSNBC and Fox. And that's an important point of a principle that won't be resolved if this is settled. The other point of principle is this: if the shoe were on the other foot, if this were a case in which CNN were being sued for putting on points of views that turned out to be erroneous, I suspect the ACLU and the New York Times would be all over the case, talking about the First Amendment rights of the networks. But because it's Fox, I suspect that a lot of civil libertarians and First Amendment advocates have forgotten about their historical commitment to freedom of speech and just see this as part of the, get the right, get Trump, get Fox mentality, which is so prevalent both on the right and on the left. Principle has today become subordinate to partisanship in all aspects of life.
Now, you've, as you've mentioned, been involved in lawsuits as an individual. Are you partly making a distinction here that this is a company that is suing with regard to Dominion voting systems, or is it the nature of what, how they've acted that is making you distinguish putting this case in a different camp?
Well, I don't believe that companies have the same rights as individuals, but the Supreme Court has said they do. One problem with Dominion, and I've written about this, and I'm involved in another lawsuit that deals with this, is apparently Dominion is unwilling to let the public get access to its algorithms to determine whether or not their machines are subject to hacking. I'm not one of the conspiracy theorists. I believe the election of 2020 was fair and that Biden won fair and square. And I don't think that there were problems with the machines which would have affected the outcome of the election, but I'm worried about future elections. And I think many Americans are. And I do think that the courts, before they allow Dominion to bring a lawsuit for defamation, should require Dominion to allow experts to have access to their algorithms and their inner workings and let the public know whether or not there's anything at risk. When the government allocates to private companies governmental responsibilities, such as counting votes, the company that accepts that and accepts the money for it, there's a lot of money involved here,
1.6 billion.
Have transparency rather than like a private company allowed to protect its own trade secrets.
Anything you would be watching for? I know you've spoken about, malice and the challenges with that with regard to your own case and others. What else would you be watching for in this case since, of course, there's going to be, if it does go to trial, a lot of testimony that will come out, having been through these cases yourself? Any thoughts on how it'll unfold?
Sure. People will be called and asked their personal views on this. Again, if this were the New York Times that were being sued, civil libertarians would be saying, no, you can't ask journalists about their personal views. That's covered by the First Amendment. But this judge did permit personal views of various anchors to be put on the record. And so I think it'll be interesting to hear from these anchors and to hear what they say about their personal views and what role their personal views have in presenting these issues. It's a little bit like a lawyer. When I represent somebody, like when I represented Donald Trump, my personal views were very much against him being elected. I voted against him twice. Mm-hmm. I plan to vote against him a third time if he gets the nomination, but I would never allow my personal views to interfere with my representation. Is a TV network the same as a lawyer, or is it different? Must TV networks express views only which they honestly and truly believe in? That would deprive the rest of us of hearing views that we might not agree with. I think the American public is intelligent enough to separate out truth from falsity. We certainly hear a lot of both today in the media. And so I do worry about the implications for the First Amendment about cases like this. This is a complicated and difficult case.
Great. Thanks for joining us, Alan.
My pleasure. Thank you.